Welcome to the Blackout Show, presented by The Guillen Grid, a show about the Chicago White Sox baseball, the good, the bad, the ugly. We'll debate what's working and what's not on the south side of Chicago. It's old school versus new school baseball. And most importantly, we're keeping all the receipts.
Let me tell you something right now. I've had probably about 3 to 4 weeks of the best baseball experience of my life, and it's all because of, you guessed it, the United States of America. Thank you, Rob Manfred, for allowing Mike Trout, my boy Tim Anderson, and the gang come and to destroy the world competition. Now, I know we took the L to Japan. I understand that. But me, Jay Targaryen, have never been proud of being not only an American, but a fan of baseball. I'm proud of you boys. Oh, let's go. How you guys doing, man?
Not as good as Shohei Ohtani right now. Golly.
Oh, you just
all right. So like 5 minutes ago, this game ended, and I didn't think it was going to last. It was like a 4-hour game, which shout out to the pitch clock now. That makes us appreciate things a little bit more. The World Baseball Classic was dope, dude. And yeah, what more could you want than Mike Trout versus Shohei Ohtani for the final out of the ball game?
That last at-bat was sick.
Ohtani pumping 101 down the dick, and Trout could not catch up to it. And then with 2 strikes, that slide piece was so dirty. That was awesome. Gonzo, what did you think of the championship game?
You know, that's the first time I've seen, I think, Trout golf at so many pitches in his at-bats in that series. But that was as best of a championship game you could probably get in this tournament. And for all the right reasons, you had the 2 best teams of the Classic there.
Are you surprised that Japan won?
A little bit surprised, just because I didn't really realize how much talent was really on that Japan roster.
There's a lot, to be fair, there's a lot of guys that people have never heard of outside of like the 3, 4, 5 and Roki Sasaki. There's not a ton of guys that you're average, not that you guys are average Joe baseball fans, but there's not a ton of guys that people are aware of name wise,
especially like the power coming from the bottom of that lineup that Japan has. I was kind of shocked to see that. So but all the power to them. I mean, it means a lot of these countries outside the USA, I feel like it means a whole lot more to them, and they definitely showed it through the tournament. So,
well, yeah, look at the brand of baseball that they played. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't just about playing 9 innings. It was about letting my personality, letting the mentality of the team, the country as a whole, take place on the field. Like, look at what happened when Trey Turner hit that grand slam. The dugout emptied. You don't really see that in America's game all too often. It's slowly getting into that point. But come on, G. Mookie Betts and Tim Anderson flipping over the railing. You got Mike Trout got his tongue out like he's Jordan, Slav.
And yeah, I mean, I think you were saying in the group chat, like, obviously not Mr. Personality, right? Like, not the most, flamboyant or extravagant type guy on the baseball field. But like, yeah, you saw a lot of these guys, and this is great for the game of baseball, despite what you said about Rob Manfred, who's trying to actively destroy the game of baseball. We'll get more into some of his comments about the upcoming the future World Baseball Classic a little bit later in the show, which brings us to our introductions. Thank you for joining us. Episode 3 of the Blackout Show. Ozzie Guillen Jr. is like in Chichiri Beachy or some random place doing who knows what.
No call.
He's not here tonight. Yeah, no vacations as far as I thought, were allowed on our show. I'm Slavko Bekovic. I'm actually here for episode 3, unlike OJ. So is Jay Targaryen. We won't say his actual last name, and we won't say what he likes to do as a hobby. And Chris Gonzalez joining us as always for episode 3 tonight.
I got a family reunion coming up, Slav.
Is it going to be like uncensored? Like, I don't really know. I don't want to know any of the details.
It's going to be a Targaryen family reunion, but go ahead. Now.
Yeah. And then 9 months later, there's going to be 1 million more Targaryens. Like, what do you know? But this is a baseball podcast, so let's keep it baseball here. We don't need to talk about incest and Targaryens.
Oh my God.
So the White Sox, as the name of this episode, the White Sox showed out in maybe some surprising ways for the World Baseball Classic. They had, I think, 8 or 9 guys total. We'll start with the team that went the furthest. There was no White Sox players on Japan, the winners, but Team USA had Tim Anderson. They had Kendall Graveman. They had Lance Lynn. Let's start with TA because there was some question marks about where he was going to play, if he would play over Turner or Bobby Witt. Obviously, he ends up going to second base. He looked pretty natural overall. But before we get to that, let's go ahead, Jay, and see our Stone Pony tweet of the week. For all that was made about how the World Baseball Classic didn't matter and how it wasn't important to the players and how so many of the American guys specifically didn't really care to be there, blah, blah, blah. I think it's pretty damn proven at this point that it mattered to pretty much everybody that was on these rosters. And it mattered a whole hell of a lot to a lot of the viewers at home for, countries like Puerto Rico, Venezuela, certainly Japan. The amount of players talking about how crazy the atmosphere was, and it was the loudest game and the most intense game. I think Mark DeRosa tonight on the championship, he had the headset on during the game. He's obviously in the dugout managing Team USA. He said this is the most fun experience he's had in baseball, but also the most stressful managing this team. So go ahead and punch up the tweet. Tim Anderson had some interesting quotes today. Bob Nightingale posted this pregame. This is kind of my World Series at the moment. Now, you don't want to read too much into just a written quote based on what TA had to say, but the man played in I think every game for the Team USA. He played at second base. He looked pretty smooth. He hit somewhere over 400, which is pretty typical for him. He looked good, and I think this quote from TA might get maybe a little bit misinterpreted or blown out of proportion. It doesn't mean that he doesn't care about the White Sox or the importance, but I think this just highlights, guys, what everybody was saying the last week or so, the last 10 days about just how fun and amazing this tournament turned out to be for all the guys involved.
Oh, yeah. Like he said it was his World Series. Now, the only difference in the World Series and the World Baseball Classic is obviously you're winning a different trophy, but all of the games matter. Every game is competitive. Like, there's probably a big gap in the most important game for TA in this atmosphere, playing alongside the Mike Trouts, the Paul Goldschmidts, the best the game has to offer with some meat on the bone. So I agree with TA. This could feel like a World Series because I'm not trying to go home the loser. I'm not trying to make my teammates, feel like I didn't do enough. And that he never played with these guys before. Like, outside of Lance Lynn and Graveman, those are the only teammates he's had. So for him to have that type of accountability and say, yeah, I want to win it for you guys and I still want to put on the show, that's important. That's really important. Hopefully it could transpire into him bringing that bravado and that swag back to the South Side.
Yeah, for me with Tim, just another example to show that he is really a true face of the game for the MLB. And as being a shortstop, it was going to be a fight on if he's going to be short or end up being in second base. But regardless, you see so many MLB Network commercials, and Tim is involved in them. So I don't think we in the Chicago media really truly realize that as much, and it really gets to show it. So For me, just the fact that TA is out there getting these competitive at bats and being in that competitive atmosphere, it only bettered him. And going forward, I feel like that's just going to carry over to the regular season. That's all we really wanted is TA coming back healthy, recovering, and just showing himself off in the classic. And it just makes his image even better throughout baseball.
Gonzo, you were talking about in one of our previous episodes how, you thought that this was going to be good for guys like Moncada, like Lance Lynn, having the juices of a competitive game early on in the season. Like, number one, from a White Sox and MLB and any team's perspective, you want your guys to come back healthy. Win or lose, you don't really care. Yes, it'd be great if they all made deep runs and blah, 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 but you want them to come back healthy. Unfortunately for, Edwin Diaz and the Mets, that's not the case. For the most part, White Sox came away pretty unscathed. But Tim Anderson, he looked like TA, and this is good considering the injury he had last season. He said in an interview early on in spring that he felt like he could have come back late in the regular season last year and played, but at that point, the White Sox were kind of down and out, and it didn't make any sense. So it's good to see that physically he looks okay. It's good to know that, for the most part, he looked pretty damn smooth at second base. He, made all the right reads and seemed to kind of read the ball well off the bat. Turned a few double plays, which is definitely not easy to do when you're used to seeing it and executing it from the shortstop angle. And now all of a sudden you've got to do it from second. Everyone thinks like second base is just like the easiest position in baseball. But it's really not. There's a lot that goes into it from the mental side of the game. So it's good to see that. And just from, his at bats, he worked some counts. He looked like just kind of vintage TA. Anything off speed on the outer third, like he just shot it up the middle or opposite field for a base knock. Seemed to be running really fine. Juan Diego says the atmosphere in Miami, he went to, oh, that's sick. I'm so jealous that you went to 3 games.
3 games?
I mean, that's Adam Wainwright said it was the craziest atmosphere he's ever played in. I think Trey Turner, who's been to the World Series, said it was the loudest baseball game he's ever taken part of. I think this was the quarterfinal or the semifinal. All these guys that participated loved it. And it's good to see that Tim Anderson kind of, represented the White Sox well. He did get taken out in the semis and in the championship game in the 7th or 8th for Jeff McNeil to play second base, which is fine, kind of defensive replacement type thing. McNeil's going to give you good at-bats, and he's a natural second baseman, so I have no problem with that. Any other thoughts you guys had on TA before we get to Rob Manfred and what he had to say?
No, I think we touched everything up on TA and the USA. You got
For me,
anything, Gonzo?
I feel like it'll be interesting to see maybe next year or two what the Sox end up doing at shortstop, because you see TA being put at second base. So does that mean they extend him? And maybe with the flexibility that they have in 24, they might sign another shortstop and kind of play that up the middle and maybe move him over to second base. That it's interesting what they can do, knowing that what we've seen from TA at second base now in a competitive series in the Classic. So, and I liked what I saw out of him. So it'll be interesting.
So all right, you got this comment from Alfredo. TA can play second, bring on Montgomery. I'm sure that's partly in jest.
Get him out of here, man.
Get who out of here?
Alfredo. I don't want to see Tim Anderson play
so,
no other position.
Gonzo, to your point, who the hell are you signing or bringing in that's going to move Tim Anderson to second base? Because they're not going to sign somebody worth $300 million if that person even exists in free agency next year.
Well,
like who are you signing that's going to slap TA in the face and be like, no, now you're moving to second base?
Well, considering that not really Han, but Jerry was offering to give Rodon 150 this offseason. Now that's just a pitcher, so who knows what kind of money they can throw at a position player. I'm not going to put against them.
My point is, what shortstops are out there that are realistically available, whether it's trade or free agency, that you go, we're definitely moving TA to second base. Like, there's only a handful of guys. Trey Turner would have been one of those guys. To me, Dansby Swanson, you don't sign him and move TA to second.
No, but I don't know. Like, I'd have to go look at the options for next year and see.
Yeah, Juan Diego got the answer for you.
Exactly, none. Look. He's the face of your franchise. And as TA goes, the White Sox go. Now, obviously, he's not an elite shortstop defensively. he's gotten much better. He's certainly above average, I would say, at this point. You know, he's had some really tough series the last couple of years, but for the most part, like unless you're going to be bringing in one of the top 3 to 5 maybe shortstops in baseball, and really it's got to be like top 3 to move TA to second base. And anybody who says
and it could have been
TA
done
play
though.
second now,
It could have been done in 23. But we can't say it cannot be done when obviously.
But there's no realistic option. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And anybody who says
for you, Gonzo, just for
anybody
you, Gonzo,
who says Elvis Andrus should play shortstop and TA should move to second just doesn't know a goddamn thing about baseball. I'm sorry.
But like you go back to this last class, like I would love to see Bogarts here. So like that's why I'm saying like there's options out there. We just don't know. Like when the time comes, once we see who the class is going to be.
Bogarts was unreasonable, Gonzo. You know,
right? That's what I'm saying. Realistic options. Even when Manny Machado was a free agent of the Sox, were in pursuit the other, 3 years ago now, whatever it was. TA openly came out and said, "Yeah, sure, bring him on. He'll help, but I'm the shortstop."
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not there at that point. Say it's unrealistic because we're not there yet. So
and we will never be there with the White Sox. As long as TA is on the White Sox, I guarantee you, there's nobody that's going to come in and take over shortstop from him.
But I don't know that either because I don't know if they're actually thinking about extending him. It doesn't. It like before the Classic, it didn't sound like they were even thinking about it.
My point is, as long as he is a member of the White Sox and on the active roster, whether that if they don't extend him, that's a different story. If TA is on the White Sox, TA is playing shortstop. They are not bringing anybody else in that's going to make him move to second base.
Why are you trying to move off a top 10 shortstop?
I was not expecting to have this conversation tonight. Like, what the hell?
Oh, you're going to hear about this in the group chat later, Gonzo.
Ozzy, if Ozzy was here right now, you think I'm laying into you. Juan Diego says it. Turner, it's a lock. That's like the only guy that, he obviously just signed a huge deal with Philly, so it's not happening anytime soon. Like, I just don't see any scenario in which any shortstop comes to the White Sox for multiple reasons, whether it's the amount it would cost in a trade, the amount it would cost in free agency. I just can't see TA not being the shortstop of the White Sox in any time in the near future.
I do agree with you with that. The Elvis situation, like that just made no sense when it was being brought up with having him play shortstop when TA is healthy. Like that made no sense. But even with what Alfredo was saying here, like there's a lot of scouts in this organization that was already moving Montgomery out to the outfield. Like they're not, for sure guaranteeing him in the infield. So
and he's also, he's a bigger guy and he's still growing. There's a good chance he ends up at third base if he does stay in the infield. Whether or not they pay TA, that's another question mark. I think they know they probably have to. I think they probably aren't going to be thrilled with what the price he's going to demand is. But, that's going to be a very interesting.
It's the same thing like Zach LaVine's max contract with the Bulls. You're in a point to where you have to pay that man.
Pretty much.
I think like to go with what you're saying, like if you look at 24, I think the payroll right now, the active roster payroll is at like 135. So they got like at least 50 million there to catch up to where they are this year. To use.
Sure, theoretically,
if they're using this year's balance for next year, you got 50 million.
Theoretically, you're going to have to pay TA or any other shortstop. So that you can pencil in 15 million guaranteed. If Giolito stays, which I don't know if that's realistic, but you're going to have to go sign another pitcher. Dylan Cease is eventually going to get a contract extension. Like you can't just say like, oh, this is how much is on the books because obviously contracts are going to change. Man, I'm like just did not expect us to be having this conversation at all right now. Like, Gonzo, you threw me off entirely. Let's stick with Team USA.
Gonzo.
Let's stick with Team USA. Kendall Graveman, the second of 3 members on Team USA from the White Sox. We didn't see him a ton, which is kind of disappointing. I really would have liked to have seen him pitch tonight in the championship game. They went to like Jason Adam, David Bednar from the Pirates, and
Aaron Luke.
Well, that made sense because it was lefty early, and Japan had like 5 straight lefties to start their batting orders. Freeland, he gave him some good innings, but anyway, with Graveman, like not a ton to kind of base it off of. You just hope that he's getting his regular work, and I'm sure the White Sox were in contact with with them, all three of those guys, just to make sure that, they're still getting in games and whatnot. But then you have Lance Lynn, who made 2 starts for Team USA, looked really good in one, a little shaky to start his last start, but we heard him have some interesting comments, and it reminded me of Mark Burley back in 2005, like wanting to close if necessary tonight for Team USA. He was on the Foul Territory podcast or show, which is a new show which AJ Pierzynski is a part of and hosting. Jay, why don't you play us the clip on Lance Lynn talking about wanting to just be available tonight for Team USA in the WBC.
Hey, Lance, I'm assuming because you threw the other night, you're done, right? With the WBC, you're done.
Yeah. I asked the White
expect...
Sox if I could close or something like that tomorrow, and they were like, "Absolutely not." So, I think is you supposedly set up to throw the championship game?
No, he's
not
Yamamoto. No,
Yamamoto, but Ohtani might close out the game. Angels are letting him close things out, apparently.
Well, if he's slated to be able to close, then I'm gonna have to get on a phone with Rick today and see if I can.
Is that not the mentality that you want out of like anybody on your roster? Like, I fucking love Lance Lynn's. I want 26 Lance Lynn's on my team. Lynn pitched well. He certainly looks like he's ready for the regular season. He was adamant that he wanted to stay in his previous start, and he was adamant that he would have wanted to have been available tonight to close things out. Ohtani did pitch the 9th inning for Japan. He gets the save, I guess, technically. What did you guys think of Lynn's performance, and what did you think about his comments there on Foul Territory? He wanted to go Mark Burley and come into the 13th inning after a couple of Busch lattes.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, it's kind of weird watching Lance Lynn pitch in the WBC compared to what he did last year because he's not so fastball heavy now. You see a lot of breaking stuff, a lot of off-speed stuff, and that tells me that's a guy who's putting his pride aside and doing what's best for the team. Because you think about this, Slav. He could throw you 3 different fastballs, right? But he was taking some off. He was trying to stay into the game. That lets me know that he was locked in as a starter. This is just not no exhibition tournament for Lance Lynn. I feel like he gave a championship effort, and the fact that he only got hit once, he only gave up 1 mistake, and that was the home run. Make no mistake about it. He's been dynamite this whole spring. So I mean, I liked Lance Lynn in the WBC. I mean, he performed well. He represented the country well. It was straight A's for me.
What you think, Gonzo?
Well, first off, with that interview with Lynn, I mean, that just is your typical bastard Lynn. Like, you just love the guy. I just love the guy. And yeah, I mean, just with his interviews, in general, I love what we get from Lynn. But even himself on the mound, I know I went back last episode to say that he had the best second half of our pitching staff.
There's a second half right there.
But to see him just continue on from the second half in the World Baseball Classic and pitch well, he's just representing well. And I think as a guy that's going to be up there in our rotation as a top 3, he's going to get going into the season. And
he's number 2. He's not top 3. He's number 2.
Yeah, I mean,
I know you love Michael Kopech. We all love him, but he's like Lance Lynn is your number 2 starter.
With how Kopech's been pitching this spring, I mean, we'll see. Hey, Slav, you remember how Kopech began last year? Like, if he's that pitcher, and why is that a bad thing? Though, why is that a bad thing if you have to argue who's 2 and 3 if they're pitching that well? Like,
okay, but like it's March 21st, so there is no argument about how well Michael Kopech is pitching because he said himself he didn't love his stuff in his last outing. Gonzo, you were just derailing all of our conversations. But look, yes, I would love it if Michael Kopech was our number 2 starter. To me, that means hopefully things have gone really well for him and not really poorly for the rest of the rotation. But look, Lance Lynn is your number 2 starter. He's the horse. And I think my favorite part of that interview in regards to the WBC was him telling a story of how he actually made his way onto Team USA's roster. Long story short, he said he was basically drunk at hunting camp, was like 11 p.m. They had steaks on the grill, and he FaceTimed Mark DeRosa and says, I'm coming. I'm playing. And, D-Row had no option, no choice at that point. So that's essentially how Lynn worked his way onto the roster. I am happy that he took part. And I think, to me, that's why I want, I'm a little bit more anxious to see him pitch early in April because of how he had to get kind of amped up and ready a little bit earlier than the rest of the guys. I think that's going to be huge and beneficial for him in April and early on in the season. Jay, to your point, I don't know that I am super thrilled that he was, kind of junk balling it. Yes, maybe it's a good thing that he's, willing to kind of change it up. I don't know if, are you concerned, or either of you concerned at all of the fact that like he wasn't 90% fastball like he normally is?
No, I wasn't concerned because that wouldn't have been a winning formula. Like, you got to think you're going against the best of the best. And if let's just say you show Venezuela 90% fastball, he's only going to pitch 2 innings, and his fucking ERA is going to be higher than his age. So I feel like you've seen Lance Lynn get back to who he was when he was 24, 25 years old, showing the changeup to get the arm side run, breaking off a sweeping slider instead of just the hard cutter. Like, I feel like we're watching him transform back into a complete pitcher instead of just all velocity and just, trying to change eye level. So I like it. It's an encouraging thing. I wish Lucas Giolito would get to that point in his career too, and go back to where he was in Washington, being curveball heavy, because he has a good curveball. He just went away from it the last few years, and I think that'll help him being a taller pitcher. So long story short, I just think that Lance Lynn was just reverting back to normal, which is great for the White Sox because that's a more durable pitcher and a more responsible and mature pitcher.
Man, I don't know that I agree with that. But Gonzo, what you got?
I was gonna say there's several things on that interview I liked. One, like he said that they base everything on the Cy Young standings, which I just laughed at because I know he's joking about it. But I mean, regardless, like we both know, like you said, Slav, that it's gonna be 1-2 Cease Lynn. But another part of that interview that I enjoyed was him talking about wanting to pitch to 40, and he's always changing things up so he can save himself and just do what's best for the team. So like what Jay is saying with, I know this, or next year, I think, no, this will be his last year on the contract, but I'm just excited with his age right now. He's still one of the better arms. And I know he said it in the interview, he might be considered underrated, but he's just a top veteran pitcher in this league, and he's still going at it. And I'm not really worried if he went more of his off speed, just because he knows the hitters are so a little bit further in their progression right now in the spring than the pitchers are. So I think he would just rather go off speed so he can kind of minimize that advantage. And that's where I think he's at right now. So, but I think once he gets going, we're going to see those cutters and how he changes his grips and works the movement off of them to really, like what we saw last year when he was pitching to Mike Trout. Ironically, he was just hitting them with just cutters and just changing his grips and movement on them. So he's a guy that will work with that slider cutter action. I
hope. Look, his career he's been very consistent. He's like always 85 to 90% fastball, 4-seam, 2-seam, cutter, which he kind of opens up into a little bit more of a slider. My concern is that if he's going way more breaking ball, that's more strain on your elbow and on your arm than throwing 90% fastballs, especially for a guy his size. We'll see. I don't know that once we get into April and regular season that he's still going to be pitching the same way he did in the WBC. But Gonzo, you kind of alluded to him saying he's underrated. Let's go ahead and then Jay, pull that clip up for us. Let's hear what Lynn had to say.
I mean, the fact that you're asking me a question, I am. So
I know you're not.
Yeah.
I know you're not.
I think I'm one of those guys that people that have played the game, people that are around the game, they know what I'm about. Sometimes that's how it happens. You're the guy that might not get the publicity or whatever that might be, but that's not who I am either. I'm going to show up every day. I'm going to do everything I can to help my team win, and that's how I've been my whole career.
That's a horse. That's, again, like anytime this man opens his mouth, he just says everything that you want to hear. And it's good for him to kind of still have that chip on his shoulder, despite the success he's had the last, 4 or 5 seasons in the MLB. He's been, I think, top 6 in Cy Young for 3 of the last 4 years, 4 of the last 5. It's good that he's got that chip on his shoulder, because it means that he's not just going to, kind of rest on his laurels and, hey, I got my contract. I've had a great career. Like, let's just kind of coast into retirement. Like, he wants the ball. He wants to win. He wants to go deep into games, and he wants to kind of lead this team and this pitching staff deep in October.
Yeah. You could look at the way that Lance Lynn carries himself. This is exactly what the White Sox need, especially in the rotation, because look at our best 2 talents, Kopech and Dylan Cease. They're not proven. They're not stoppers in a rotation yet. They're not anybody you can depend on for 180 to 200 innings. I can ask Lance Lynn for that. So you watch the man and how he carries himself. He cares about how others view him. Social consistency is important to Lance Lynn. That's why he's so relatable to guys like us. He's just one of the guys. He's the big bastard. You know what I'm saying? That persona is important on this Chicago White Sox team when you're trying to build a culture, when you're trying to figure out who's a leader and who's just, old and productive. So I'm glad we got Lance Lynn in house.
I feel like he's just like one of those guys that just, he accepts his own role and what he has as a pitcher. And for one, he didn't get to the MLB with just throwing gas with overpowering velocity. He's a guy that, with what he has in his pitches, he just mixes and matches location and control. And he's been able to do that for his tenure and just eat innings. And I just remember him as a Cardinal, and he talked about this in an interview. He felt like he was overlooked because of your Wainwrights, and Westbrook was there, and he felt like, people weren't really paying attention to him. And then he went to Texas, and like as an outsider, like I didn't really see him as, like I do consider him underrated, because when he was away from the Sox, like I wasn't really like too crazy about, him as a pitcher. But then until he gets here, and then as time goes on, you see what he can do. And then you see what you're saying, Slav, where he's up there in Cy Young over the past 3 out of 4 years. And one of those veteran guys that can eat up innings, like he's just what you want as a pitcher. And I'm glad that we have him. So
what didn't you like about him, out of curiosity, when he was with Texas?
Well, like I just know, like if I remember right, his ERA was kind of up there in Texas, which it can be hard pitching in Texas at Arlington Heights. But I think it's just because of that, like he doesn't have that overpowering stuff, and like
that's exactly what he was alluding to.
Yeah,
that's exactly what he's underrated until you've got him on your team, and you're like, yo, this guy, fucking love this guy.
And he's absolutely right about that, because like you don't see that stuff, and you're not excited about it, but he just outworks you as a pitcher, and he just gets outs and gets his dubs, and I respect that, especially when he was a rookie on that St. Louis squad. I mean, you're up there with dogs in the rotation, and he was just learning from them and how to be a pro, and he learned with the right staff and the right manager at the time and carried that with him on his journey. And it might not have worked out in Texas for the best. I think he's still great at Texas, don't get me wrong, but like I know there were some up and down years there, but to get him here, like you said, you just get that much more respect once you have that guy.
Remember the White Sox fans were upset we traded away Dane Dunning for Lance Lynn. Like, I got blocked by about 40 people because I was telling them, like, I don't give a damn about Dane Dunning. Give me Lance Lynn when it's winning time. Like, that was a move that Rick Hahn made that lets me know he at least believes a World Series is right there.
It was definitely a win-now move. You know, everybody, and probably a lot of the reason why you got blocked by so many people is because Dane Dunning had a really strong season that second half in 20. Well, I guess second half was like a month. Then he gets the start in game 3, and Ricky Renteria, yanks him quick. But, people had high hopes for him. He was young. He was controllable. And I think you kind of knew what to expect out of him. And, to your point, Gonzo, like Lynn is not a sexy name. He doesn't have sexy stuff. Like there's just nothing about him to the unless you're watching him pitch every 5 days as a member of your team, nothing about him just like really stands out other than he eats innings. But it was the perfect move for Lynn. And I mean, his first half in 21, his first season with the White Sox, was as good of a half as we've seen like any Sox pitcher since like Contreras in 06. And that includes Cease maybe even in the second half last year or the first half last year. Like he's the perfect guy. And one of the reasons why I'm glad he's on the White Sox now is because he's there with Dylan Cease and Michael Kopech as they kind of establish themselves into what, Lynn has become in his career. Ideally guys who are going to make 30 starts every year, pitch 200 innings and, be relied upon at the top of a rotation. I kind of alluded to this earlier. And by the way, if you haven't already, go listen to this full interview from Lance Lynn. It's on Foul Territory. It's on YouTube. He talked with AJ Pierzynski, Adam Jones, Eric Kratz for like 20 minutes. A lot of great stuff in there. And he also had an interesting answer when he was asked about who should start opening day. And Jay, that's going to take us to Griffol's grounds.
Yeah, baby. Wait.
I don't have a problem making decisions. I don't have a problem making a call on a pitcher. I don't have a problem making a call on whatever our team needs at this particular moment.
I love that I'm catching Jay off guard. Like every time I ask for an animation, he's like, "Yeah, let's see, here it comes." Click.
Damn.
But so as part of this interview, Lance Lynn was asked, is he starting opening day? And by the way, like AJ Pierzynski is still a huge like White Sox homer. So he had a lot of questions about the Sox in there. And Lynn said, no, he thinks it's good. Like he didn't confirm that it's going to be Dylan Cease, but he basically said Cease deserves it. Finishing second in Cy Young last year, he's earned it with all the things that he did. And going back to his days with Adam Wainwright in St. Louis, he said, opening day starter should always be the guy that finished highest in the Cy Young voting or standings, the previous year. And I'm sure he was joking, but I'm sure there was also quite a bit of honesty to that. So we asked the poll question on the Blackout Show Twitter account, who should be the White Sox opening day starter? And this is about the response that I expected. Cease gets 77%, Lynn gets 21%. I don't know who these people are. Is Gonzo voting for Kopech? Is that the other?
Yep.
Probably.
No,
I certainly don't think Clevenger or Giolito, deserve it. But it was an interesting to say, like outright by Lynn, that no matter what the manager even thought, that Cease should be the guy. I understand why 77% said Cease. Me personally, I would give the ball to Lynn for multiple reasons. Number one, he's readier to go because of the WBC. He kind of got his stuff amped up and ready to go a little bit more. He has the right mentality for it. Number two, and I think, if I look through the schedule correctly, the way that the rotation would line up, assuming that they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and don't skip anybody because of off days or whatnot, Cease would actually miss the Twins, which I personally like because they're obviously the most familiar with them. And you'd get him against, like the Pirates, which you would think would be a easy win in a very tough schedule in April. I was surprised to see Lynn just straight up say, because of the type of guy he is, like you would think he'd want the ball, but I was surprised for him to say just straight up it's going to be Cease.
So that shows you the respect he has for Dylan Cease and what his eyes tell him up front. Like, no, I see this guy being one of the top pitchers in the American League. And don't get me wrong, Lance Lynn's numbers in the second half were great. Gonzo was telling us a few weeks ago, like he outpitched Cease during the stretch last year. And for him to still come out and say, no, Dylan Cease, day one starter, what are we doing here? Like that tells me a lot about not only the stuff that Lynn sees, but how he sees Dylan Cease up against Kopech and probably other young pitchers around the league.
Yeah, and really, I think it just shows you the difference between, granted, Lynn was injured for the first half with his knee injury that he was battling with, but just shows you the difference between a full season that Cease really showed his progression as a starter and took that leap forward to show his dominance as an ace of our staff last season. And it's no fluke. I mean, he went back-to-back years of 32 starts and 225 plus strikeouts.
Yeah, talk to him nice.
He just looks not so great without the mustache anymore, honestly.
Yeah, that's a guy that going forward, you got to allow him just to cook. Let him cook. Let him keep going and prove that wasn't a fluke of back-to-back years and continue on for another consistent year going forward here. But again, like going back to what we were saying, like it shouldn't be just Cease. I mean, guys need to step up and take off from the start of the season. And like I know Junior alluded to it too, like it would be unfortunate to see Cease be the only one that takes that being that consistently, I don't know, pitcher going forward for another breakout year if it's just him and not anyone else. Like that doesn't do the team any good. So but yeah, I would consider it just take it day by day. Like I wouldn't look past into future series in the month of April to determine your rotation. You have to move with your best arm that you feel is your best pitcher going forward to lead your staff. And if the guys respect Cease, you got to give him the ball and allow him to do his work.
I got a question for you guys. How many opening day starts do you see Michael Kopech making in a White Sox uniform? Because granted, I think we're going to have Dylan Cease for a while. So, I mean, what is there a chance Michael Kopech be the ace?
Fan.
What happened?
Let's get Gonzo's thoughts. Big Mr. Kopech fan.
Cease is my guy. I just respect Kopech, but we have to see if Kopech takes that leap after his first season, like Cease did from 21 to 22. Because a lot of people like the potential that Kopech has. I still think the potential that Cease, because Cease only made this jump with basically 2 pitches. He really didn't use the usage of his knuckle curve or changeup as much last year. And it's kind of the same situation as Kopech with the slider and his fastball. So, but again, I still see Cease has potential of 4 pitches that you can use. So
yeah, he got 4 pisses too. Yeah, that would piss a lot of batters off if he was throwing them all for strikes.
He'd piss a lot of batters away with the stuff that he has with his knuckle curve, changeup, slider. Again, that slider was a 47% whiff rate, best pitch in the league last year.
Which is crazy considering like Corbin Burns, cutter, or even Devin Williams changeup. Like it was the most elite pitch in baseball.
Yeah. So again, for me, that's muscle memory when it comes to those pitches that you throw. So if he can continue that, which I feel like he will, it's hard for me to gauge that off of the spring. I know me and Slav talked about off-speed pitches in the spring, but I don't think that's something we'll really see too much until the spring grows here when he comes back to elevation here in Chicago.
Answer the question.
I'm going to say no.
0.
I'm going to say no.
I would agree. I think it's 0. I don't think it has anything to do with Kopech. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think as long as Cease is here, I can't see a scenario, even if Cease takes a step back this year, barring some, something like unforeseen.
What's a step back though? Like a 3 ERA?
That would be a step back for him. I think anywhere between 3 and 3.5, like that is a step back. That's still a very, very good pitcher. And if he, knock on wood, continues to be that guy to make 32 starts every year, like that's still a very, very good pitcher and someone that you want to have. But I think even if Cease took a step back, let's say 1 step back, so somewhere around a 3 ERA, maybe 3.25 in that range, and Kopech takes a step forward, I still think Cease having an extra year basically of full season experience would be the guy that I would give the ball to in the future. I hope Kopech pans out. I hope he turns into the ace that he has the potential to be. We've heard nothing but praise for him from Ethan Katz and Yasmani Grandal and pretty much everybody that's seen him throw all spring. But, again, like I try not to put too much stock into spring numbers. I try not to put too much stock into, velocity. Like Kopech's velocity has not been where he wanted it to be. Lucas Giolito pitched today against the Brewers. He said his velocity, he said he doesn't care about velocity as long as he's getting swings and misses like he was for the most part today. Cease's velocity has not been 97 and 99 like we're accustomed to. So I don't want to put too much stock into it. To answer your question, Jay, I think the answer is 0 for Kopech. I think just as long as Cease is here, he's going to be the guy to get the ball on opening day. But I don't know. Do we hope that we're wrong? What do you think, Jay?
I definitely hope I'm wrong, because if you look at the talent that Michael Kopech is, if you tell me his ceiling is just being a number 2 behind Dylan Cease, I feel like you're a little shortchanged. Like, I don't want to give Luis Robert the bust label because he's been hurt, but at the same time, if you look at his numbers, they just haven't been there. Michael Kopech numbers haven't been close to Dylan Cease
yet.
So, I mean, hopefully Michael Kopech can put together a season to where he could at least overlap Cease statistically, but he's going to have to stay healthy, and he's going to have to strike out more batters than what he's doing right now.
Who has the higher, let's say they both hit their peak potential, who has the higher ceiling of the two?
Dylan Cease, because of his durability. Like, let's just say Dylan Cease gives me 200 innings this year. Can you imagine what those strikeout numbers will look like? What his whip will look like?
Well, if he keeps the walks down, yeah, he's acknowledged it himself. I think he on the broadcast the other day, he was interviewed by Chuck Garfien and basically said, like, that's really the only thing that he has left to kind of like master is, just keeping the walks down. I would agree. I think Cease's ceiling is better than Kopech, but Kopech's ceiling is still,
pretty
like
damn high.
An ace. Yeah. I mean, like Cease's ceiling is like Cy Young, perennial Cy Young contender ace. I think Kopech's ceiling is like ace, but I don't know if I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. Both guys, it all just comes down to command. The stuff is there. You want durability and you want strikes. Gonzo, what do you think? Who's got the higher ceiling?
And it's funny because I feel like whenever I see this topic, I see a lot of people choosing Kopech, but I feel like it's really biased towards Kopech. I don't think people value Cease the same as they probably should. You kind of see that with the national media with snubbing Cease of the All-Star, being an All-Star, and I was surprised that he kind of got the votes for the runner-up for Cy Young as he did because he didn't get that value from the national media. So for me, it is Cease, though, just from what I've seen from Cease, he's proven it. And again, if he's only showed this with 2 pitches to this point, and he really hasn't gotten to those 3rd and 4th pitches that he has, and if he were with time, with that veteran status, he's going to learn how to be effective with his pitch counts and get ahead of the hitters sooner and trying to finish them sooner than later, and allowing the pitch counts to drag on like he has in the earlier part of his career in the rotation. And for me, once he masters that, I mean, it's a done deal for me. I mean, this is a guy that, I think the sky's the limit for him, especially with Verlander. Verlander left the American League. So granted, DeGrom came into it, but health is a big factor with DeGrom. So don't get me wrong, you got a couple pitchers in the league, American League, that will give him competition for Cy Young, but that's a guy that I'm happy that we have on our team right now with his contract status, with the years left on it. If you get a guy like Kopech, I want to bring on iron's iron. Competition's competition, and I love to see these two mustering
iron's
out.
Iron.
Yeah. So I like to see these two going at it for years to come here.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a White Sox homer, and I'm comparing our rotation to the Tribe.
Oh God.
Yeah, and I'm going there. Like,
we shouldn't do this without Junior.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I'm doing it without him, so he's gonna have to watch this on fucking playback and eat his heart out. But
well, we're gonna have to talk about it next week.
I think Michael Kopech could be better than any Guardians pitcher in 2023, and that's just Kopech.
I think his ceiling. Oh man, God, I don't know. Tristan McKenzie's really good, and obviously that Shane Bieber guy, he's still okay.
Yeah,
I need to see more from McKenzie.
yeah, that's beautiful.
How can you say that about him, but you can't say that about
That's
Kopech?
beautiful.
Because I've seen it more out of Kopech last year. Stretches of dominance.
You know what? I'm gonna co-sign it, Slav, just because it fits my narrative.
I mean, you saw what Kopech did. He dominated the Dodgers, the Yankees.
Did you watch Tristan McKenzie like down the stretch last season at all? Are you serious? Have you watched him dominate the White Sox every fucking time for 2 years?
I'm not surprised about the White Sox because of the injuries.
Hey, guess who they play more than any other team?
Hey, Slav.
Man, I don't.
Look at Juan there for you.
That's three.
Juan, like I thought we were boys. I thought we were all on Team Venezuela, and now you're just throwing me under the bus. What the F? Okay, to me, yes, I think Michael Kopech's ceiling is higher. God,
but Slav, besides Bieber, which I gotta respect Bieber, but besides Bieber and McKenzie,
what's the gap between McKenzie and Kopech?
What else?
I don't know.
Are you gonna go to Savali?
Savali has to have a pretty good time against the White Sox too.
Come on, man.
Are you going on to Savali?
Who am I forgetting in their rotation? Oh, Cal Quantrill. Are you serious?
Come on, man.
Quantrill. So you're
have you guys been watching the same fucking White Sox Indians games the last 2 years that I have? What the fuck are you talking about?
You're gonna put Bieber, McKenzie, Savali.
Guys, Kopech is the number 3 at best in the White Sox rotation right now. They won 81 games last year. What are you smoking?
All right, but Cease was a Cy Young runner-up.
Okay, and Shane Bieber was what, 3rd or 4th?
Right, or no, he was like 8th, 7th, 8th.
Okay, continue.
Lance Lynn, where you said earlier in the show, he's been
He's
been 3 out of the 4 years, 3 of the past 4 years.
Gonzo, I think we just put the cables on Slav right
now. McKenzie's not even anywhere near Cy Young.
And neither is Kopech. What are you talking about?
But I said Lance Lynn. Those 3 are better than anything the Tribe have to offer.
Yeah.
Wait. What? Say that again.
Cease, Kopech, and Lynn.
Or in your case, hold on. Slav, in your case, it's Cease, Lynn,
How are you telling me
Kopech.
that Tristan McKenzie doesn't have the same track record as Kopech? The man made 30 starts, had a sub-3 ERA, and was 8 2/3 away from 200 innings. What are you talking about? I love Michael Kopech. How is he not easily the number 2 pitcher in the White Sox rotation if you slate him in there today?
You said, wait, what?
Tristan McKenzie, look at his stats. What are you talking about?
You're putting McKenzie over Lynn?
What, based on what he did last year and his age? 2.96 ERA, 191 innings, 30 starts. 190. He averaged a K an inning, and his walks to.
So Slav, okay, since we're on it,
4.3 strikeouts to walks.
We're okay. Does Tristan McKenzie get Cy Young votes this year? In 2023?
I wouldn't be surprised at all. Will Michael Kopech get Cy Young votes?
Maybe.
I bet you Tristan McKenzie has a better chance of getting Cy Young votes than Michael Kopech.
I'm not a gambling man, so talk to Gonzo.
Wow, man. I wish. See, now I know what you guys. You're teaming up on me because OJ's not here to back me up, because he's going to say the same thing, that you guys are high.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
How can you tell me that Tristan McKenzie doesn't have a track record when Kopech had fewer starts, like Tristan McKenzie has pitched 344 innings in his last 3 seasons. How many has Kopech pitched over the last 5 seasons? 203. Kopech's career is 12 innings more than what McKenzie pitched all just last season.
Tristan McKenzie has started more games than Michael Kopech. He's been healthier. If you give Kopech and Tristan McKenzie 30 starts, you still think Tristan McKenzie is a better pitcher?
Guys, all right, like I'm blown away right now. I'm not making this up. Last season, Michael Kopech, 25 starts, 119 innings, 3.54 ERA. Okay, last season, 25, 119, 3.54. Also last season, Tristan McKenzie, at a year younger, 30 starts, 191 innings. Okay, that's 71 innings more, 5 more starts, and a sub-3 ERA. Like, what are we talking about?
Just sounds like a good year from McKenzie.
In his only year.
Oh.
The year before, he made 24 starts, 4.5
And how was it?
ERA.
Yeah, 4.5.
Okay, 4.95, 120 innings. He weighs 36 pounds, and he's already more durable than Kopech. What are you guys talking about? How are we having this conversation right now?
Because it's only one good year.
And what has Kopech done to give you more faith?
No, but I was arguing on Lynn, not Kopech.
No. Jay, did you not say that Kopech?
I was making an argument of the White Sox rotation, the top 3 being better than the Tribe's top 3. But
Yeah.
that segued into a conversation isolating Kopech and Tristan McKenzie, comparing the two.
If we polled 1,000 baseball fans and said, pick one today, Kopech or McKenzie, how many would say Kopech?
50.
50-50.
50% or 50 out of 1,000? Because I know the answer that I would say.
50 out of 1,000. I'm not gonna lie to
Okay.
you people on the internet, man.
Thank you, because we
But
keep the
that's
receipts.
also a bias of the national media versus the White Sox.
Oh,
How are you not biased as a White Sox fan against McKenzie and in favor of Kopech?
I just said that earlier with the national narrative with Cease, how he got snubbed of
this
an
is
All-Star.
great.
What does that have to do with McKenzie and Kopech?
For the same reason of national voters
I'm done
knowing
with this conversation.
McKenzie
This is
over
absolutely
Kopech.
absurd. That is absurd.
What's absurd
I am
is thinking
speechless.
that Cleveland has a better rotation than the White Sox.
Why did the Cleveland Guardians win the division last year?
Jose
What is
Ramirez,
Cleveland known for over the last decade?
Stephen Kwan.
Yeah, I would say
Players
They
like-
develop
I'd say
pitching
they're-
like a
they're
fucking
hitting.
machine. They're hitting. Jesus Christ.
their hitting, their fielding was a whole lot better. Like, there's so many of the small things that they did better than the White Sox.
Really
I'm
good
so
defensive
mad. I'm
team.
so mad at both of you for doing this without Ozzy here.
I already had this conversation with Ozzy on Twitter that you missed. When he said
And were you
that-
wrong on Twitter as well? Yes.
No,
would
I
assume
proved
so.
Jay.
What did you
Pull the
prove?
receipts.
What did you
Pull the
prove?
receipts.
What did you prove? Tell me
Junior
what you
had
proved.
Junior had no clue he's talking about with WAR.
Oh,
What does that have
yeah.
to do with anything? Did the
Because he
Guardians
said-
not win the division
He
last
said
year?
that
Did they not
Bieber. He
have
said
one of the
that
best
Bieber.
pitching-
Hold up. He said Bieber was a better pitcher than Cease last year.
You guys are making me sound like I'm not actually a White Sox fan. That's the crazy part. Like,
You need to go
how
look
the
at what he
fuck are
said
you
on
not
Twitter.
giving Tristan McKenzie his flowers? Like, what are we doing?
He's a really good pitcher. He had a really good year last year. Slav.
And he's
Good
better than
year.
Michael Kopech.
He had one.
And I
good
would
year.
absolutely take him for the next decade over Lance Lynn, obviously.
And I said I need to see more than just 1 year.
But you can't turn around and say, I need to see more out of Tristan McKenzie and then say, oh, Michael Kopech has done this and he's shown me more. He pitched more
I
innings. He
haven't
made
said
more
that,
starts.
though.
He's
I
been
haven't
more.
said
You
that,
did
though.
say that. You said that earlier.
But I
You
need to see more from
you said
Kopech too.
verbatim.
Didn't I say that I need to see him take that progression, that leap like Cease did from 21 to 22? You know that too. So don't even give me that look.
No, I'm going back and I'm going to pull the audio and I'm going to rub it in your goddamn face later.
We're gonna.
Let's
and
move on.
I'll
We're spending
timestamp
too
my
much-
own.
We
stuff,
are
too.
spending way too much time on this dumbass conversation as it is. How are we not? I mean, holy shit. Tristan McKenzie pitched 190 innings with a sub-3 ERA, and we're talking about Michael Kopech being better than him. I love Michael Kopech. What the fuck?
No,
All
I
right.
wasn't arguing McKenzie and Kopech though.
So who would
I'm
you take right
arguing-
now?
I'm still taking Kopech based off of stuff and frame.
In
Yeah,
frame.
yeah.
Okay.
And Juan said it too. There you go.
We didn't
It's
think
not-
Chris Sale's frame was going to hold up. We didn't think Alexi Ramirez's frame was going to hold up. Like, what the hell? Wow. I mean, the guy is just – his whip was .95.
He had a good
Like,
year.
what-
Slav.
Yeah,
What
good
more do you
year.
guys need
He
to
had
–
a
he's
good year.
24. What more do you need to see out of him?
He had one good year.
We need more.
Okay, you
good
could say the
years.
same thing for Dylan Cease.
He
You
had
could say
two
the
good
same
years.
thing.
No, he had
good
two.
years.
He's had two.
2 good years.
Come on, Slav.
All right, we're moving on. Wow, I cannot believe we just had this. Just like, holy shit! All right. Before we get, I want to end the show. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. Like,
We're off
I
the
am
rails.
so
We're off the
dumbfounded
rails.
right now. I cannot believe that this just fucking happened. All right, I want to end the show on a high note. We'll get to this in a bit because we have a pretty, hopefully, fingers crossed, good update on Liam Hendriks. Before we get to that, the last couple guys I want to touch on, Moncada and Robert in the WBC for Cuba. Moncada, after having a really slow start that first game and a half, he ended up hitting like 500 over the tournament. Unfortunately, in that last game, the semifinal, sales frame hasn't held. He did hold up. He was like 32 when he finally broke down. Stop. Don't do this to me. Like, I'm done. Tristan McKenzie is better than every pitcher on the White Sox right now, except for Dylan Cease. Like, just period. Okay, moving on. Moncada collided with the left fielder in the last game that Cuba played. He came back with bruised ribs. Bob Nightingale threw out this random report calling him an outfielder, one, and then said there was a concussion. But it seems like that's been kind of dispelled. So Moncada, I think he's back with the White Sox today. Day-to-day, hopefully, fingers crossed that it's nothing more serious. But, Jay, I know, like, that's your boy, and he had a hell of a tournament.
435, 5 RBIs, a home run, a couple doubles. You goddamn right he did. And the thing about Moncada was, I remember the game against Chinese Taipei where he had an error. You know what I'm saying? He fouled out with guys on base. He was still playing. That the spring was still carrying over. But it took the competition and the sense of urgency of the World Baseball Classic to kind of shake him up a little bit. Like, you don't have 140 games to get into rhythm, Yohan. It has to happen right now. And you seen him turn it on. I mean, he hit 400, for Christ's sake. He was the best. He was the best player on the Cuba team. He was the reason they got that far.
Gonzo, tell me you would take Moncada over Jose Ramirez.
Say it.
Okay, good.
Say it.
Good.
Say it.
What were your thoughts on Moncada? I mean, I'm just glad
Jose is actually one of my favorite players in the American League.
Good. Well deserved. I think he's the most underrated player in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, but with Moncada, with what you were alluding to, Slav, I'm just happy because, like, last year Moncada got banged up in spring training, and he went to the season with a hamstring injury, and we know that lingers. Evidently, with Moncada, it took him 3 months to get over that. But the fact that he's healthy now, and now we're seeing the best out of him. We saw some pop out of him. He was getting on base. The contact is there, and the glove is there. Like, that's the guy that we were expecting ever since 19. And I know we talked about this last episode. This is that mentality I was hoping for to get the best out of him going into the season. So hopefully that continues. And I'm just happy that we did get to see that, because we did see Moncada in a slump kind of before the Classic. So the fact that he went there and just turned that around, and I think he was just picking up with the vibes and that atmosphere and taking it all in, and he turned it around. Both him and Robert. So we just got to expect the best once these guys, I know that they're day-to-day, or everyone's day-to-day, it seems like right now, but once the opening season
Classic
starts,
White Sox.
Here you go with this.
Once the
Am I
opening season
wrong?
starts,
No.
but we'll get to that with Kenwo, maybe. But once the
Matter of
opening
fact.
season starts, I'll be happy to see these guys all playing together, and hopefully that's more than. Hopefully they all play for at least 120 games or so, because we haven't seen that yet. So, yeah, I'm just so happy to see the White Sox represent well in the Classic.
I was pleased with Moncada's performance. Juan Diego made a great point. The concern is the numbers against the quality of the pitchers that he faced, right? Like, he wasn't facing the greatest competition throughout the tournament, but still, the good news is, like, if you're facing subpar competition, you should beat the hell out of him, and he did. I mean, guy hit 500. So,
And I'd still say, though, that competition's better than the minor leaguers that he would have seen in the spring. So
fair. Although, I mean, like, today we saw Freddie Peralta for the Brewers for 5 innings against the White Sox, and they did hit a couple bombs off him. Romy and Sheets got him. But to me, I think it more so than the quality of the pitcher, it's the quality of the competition in general, the atmosphere, the fact that it matters for something. So it was good to see him just kind of like squaring balls up, not weak contact. He was barreling up even some of his outs. I am less thrilled with Luis Robert Jr.'s performance. I'm going to be perfectly honest here, and I hope I'm wrong. I'm a little concerned about Robert big picture. I don't know. There's just not been enough. Granted, like sample size isn't huge yet. Still, to me, there's just not been enough development as far as laying off the sliders. I mean, he's still chasing so many pitches, but he's hitting mistakes hard, and guys can make a very long and fruitful career out of that. I just worry that maybe he's just one of those guys that's never going to put it all together. Maybe he just is the guy that, crushes mistake pitches, and that's going to be great. But, we've heard Pedro Grifol. We've heard so many people talk about his MVP potential and how he can be one of the best in the game. But we need to start seeing it more often.
It did take a while. I was going to say it did take a while for Jose to lay off the slider too. So
Jose Abreu?
Yeah.
I mean, but look what he did his first season. Like, he was crushing fastballs. So I just worry that he's going to become kind of Javi Baez-esque, where there's no point in throwing him a fastball. There's no point in throwing him anything other than sliders off the plate, because chances are you're going to get some swings. And even if you miss, maybe get some weak contact, as long as you're not missing, middle third or middle, then he's going to make you pay. But do you guys think I'm off, my rocker for thinking I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Robert is a 300, 400, 500 type guy, but I'm talking about slash line. I'm a little concerned.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, you're 100% on point. Luis Robert has been in the league 3 seasons now, and you still see intricate details from the game is missing. Like, he's still chasing sliders off the plate. He's still not camping under fly balls, getting ready to deliver a throw. It's like the fundamentals of baseball is just not there. Because if Luis Robert goes to the plate with a plan like Andrew Vaughn, then we'll see him scratch that potential. There'll be a little bit of consistency. There's no consistency offensively in his game. There is no more base running because he can't stay healthy. And now the defense has eroded because he can't throw anybody out. And now he's having these gaffes in center field. He's very far away from the platinum defender. So, Slav, when you have concerns, I'm right along with you, because if you have Luis Robert, who is this 5'2" player, who isn't throwing anybody out and isn't stealing any bases, what are you going to wait on? Him to hit 330 home runs? Good luck. Good luck.
You make a great point about the defense too. As good as he is, naturally, he's like a gazelle, going to get the ball. Sometimes he just makes it look so effortless. But then we've seen a few times, especially balls kind of at the wall where he's going up to rob a homer, he just really mistimes it or kind of misjudges it. But he defensively gave up quite a few extra bases and extra runs on some of those sac flies in the outfield, the routine plays. Not that it's laziness, but like you said, he's not running into the ball. He's not throwing it to the right base or missing cutoff men. And we saw that a lot down the stretch against teams like Cleveland, where they're going to make you pay and they're always going to take the extra base, second to third on a sac fly that scores a run, that type of stuff. I don't know if it's IQ. I don't know if it's just, Daryl Boston's the guy that's supposed to be coaching up the outfielders. Is there a language barrier? I just don't understand, some of these things that he kind of, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, because I feel like a lot of times that stuff just kind of gets swept under the rug and nobody really mentions his deficiencies defensively, just because he does make some incredible plays and, going to get the ball in the gap or deep balls on the warning track. He makes them look so easy, but then there's times where it just makes you want to pull your hair out.
Yeah.
And I think Jay can attest to me when I say this, but last year, or this offseason, really, I was kind of hoping that they would move him to left field and go get a more solidified, better center fielder via trade or through a signing. And I know with the J, I think I was talking about trading for Cedric Mullins to put him out in center and sliding Roberts over to left field. Then you wouldn't have had to go, give that contract to Ben Tendi. But and I think I did say sign Haniger and put him in right field. But yeah, I saw a lot of the defensive woes in the second half, and that was really concerning me. And we just saw Kolas go into center field, this spring or this week really, and he had that diving catch in the Cease outing. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, like when he is healthy, he is a great player, and maybe there's something lingering that we just don't know about still from that surgery. But
I sure as hell hope not.
I hope not either. Yeah, but again, we got to see him come back on that flight back and get with the organization and get with this coaching staff more than what he was here for. 2 weeks was it before the Classic with this new coaching staff? So hopefully they get on him once he comes back, and whatever, it's a week of spring training left here, but it's something definitely we got to keep an eye on, and hopefully this coaching staff does get the better out of him than when he was here in 20. So for the past 2 years, he hasn't really had a great coaching staff teaching him the game better from him coming stateside. So, and there's a lot to learn from Cuba to here.
Daryl Boston's the guy that, he's supposed to be doing that. And Debo's still around. So, I mean, we've heard, I think last year Tony praised Debo quite a bit for the work he did with like Sheets and Vaughn and just kind of getting them up to speed to be outfielders in the major leagues. But yeah, I mean, Robert, granted, in 60 games, won a Gold Glove in 20, if I'm not mistaken. But that's obviously small sample. But yeah, I think it's fair to say he's regressed defensively. The more we've seen him, the talent is 1,000% there. Like, there's no reason when people talk about his potential and all the tools, like that's not a lie. That's not made up. That's 100% true. When you see this guy, like he's a freak, he's a specimen. But you have to be a baseball player. And that's my concern. I hope I'm wrong.
For me, it wasn't his glove. It's the mechanics in center field with his crow hop when he's, setting himself up on those sac fly when he catches. He's not positioning himself to make that crow hop. He's throwing it off his back foot. Yeah, it's just the mechanics side.
He's flat-footed under the ball. Yeah, like he's
and
you learn that in Little League.
His arm isn't strong enough to where he's not Bo Jackson. He's not he's not Vladimir Guerrero or Yoenis Cespedes. He's not built to throw that way. He has to crow hop and come through the ball to receive it. He's still catching the ball at his face and still trying to rearrange and reload for a throw. You're not going to get anybody like that, especially when you're making 250 to 275 foot throws to bases, and you got to be accurate. Like, there's got to be some steps in place. Like we were talking earlier about Lance Lynn going to a breaking ball style. With the pitch clock, the major leagues is going to an NBA style fast break type of pace. So you got to find ways to slow the game down. When you get Luis Robert in a situation like that where the game's slowing down and every play is magnified, he's not stealing bases. You hit the ball to Luis Robert, a guy on second base, you're going to challenge his arm. You're sending that guy home. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to score. So there's the details that Gonzo alluded to. That's got to clean up in order for him to reach his ceiling. Because let's be honest, guys, over the last year and a half, Luis Robert's ceiling got a little bit lower.
I don't know that it's changed, honestly. Like the potential is all still there. Like we've seen stretches where he looks like we talked about this with Moncada at AAA. There's stretches where Luis Robert makes baseball look easy. Like he's just out there for a Sunday stroll, like, shooting the shit on, playing baseball with his boys in the park. And like, he makes it look that easy. The potential and the ceiling to me is still right there. Like his ceiling is top 5 American League position player and, potential MVP candidate. He can do it all, but can he put it all together? That's to me what the concern is. The other kind of 2 guys I wanted to touch on with WBC, Eloy Jimenez, he's had a really strong spring. He hit well with the White Sox, and he's hit since he came back from the Dominican Republic, had a strong WBC as well in a disappointing showing for that country. But then we saw him in his second game back with the White Sox leave after a ground out. Thankfully, it's just a cramp in his leg, apparently, and it was more precautionary, and he should be fine. So Vaughn is day-to-day with some soreness. I think he's dealing with some back issues. That was supposed to be fixed. Now he's playing first base every day. Gonzo, cough, cough. Eloy is day-to-day with a cramp in his right leg, and Moncada's got the bruised ribs. So March 21st, and we're already on this shit. It's like the Grand Theft Auto meme. Here we go again.
Wow.
I know you alluded to Edwin Diaz earlier, but I think you totally forgot about Jose Altuve, the guy
Fuck him. I don't give a shit about him.
we should have been playing against him. Houston. Like, that's a huge blow, especially with Houston. And I'm just.
So does Abreu move up to like number 7 in their order now without Altuve?
Yeah, but I mean, gosh, the fact that to this point, hopefully, knock on wood, that we don't get any, like, everything's day to day, but we don't have anything lagging past day to day. So hopefully that remains, the way it is, because last thing we want to hear is this whole, injury bug hitting us, especially with everyone coming back from the Classic healthy and untouched. For the most part.
Are you guys worried about Eloy?
No.
You're not worried about him, like, physically?
I'm always going to be worried about Eloy, but in this particular moment, I expect to see him opening day 100%.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going to see a lot of them in right field, too. Just the vibe I'm getting.
Let's tease that for next week's episode, because I think we're going to be talking a lot about Oscar Colas one way or the other. Last thing we want to get to in tonight's episode.
Slav, do you have any? I wanted to add a name. Do you have anything else with White Sox players? Because I wanted to add a Sox player.
Jose Ruiz, yeah.
Yes, Jose Ruiz. Now,
give it to us.
Jay knows this. He knows me.
He's waving the hand. Yeah, bye to you too.
This off season, I did not want the Sox to tender him. I just was not impressed with him in our pen. As I know he's back end of the pen, but I just felt like that could have gone to so many different guys, to give them opportunities. But for the fact that with the performance he had, it just blew my mind to see that side of Jose Ruiz. He showed that dominance that I did not expect to see. And that's a guy, I know with Liam going down, there's going to be a lot of opportunities in that pen, but I feel a whole lot better having Ruiz if he keeps on with that energy and that stuff that he was presenting himself with. That's a guy that I feel comfortable with in the back half of that pen. I know, I think Foster's still in there, but I feel a whole lot better now.
Man, I totally forgot about Matt Foster's existence.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest with you, I felt like we seen Jose Ruiz let his nuts hang a little bit. Now, he knows his role on this White Sox staff. He knows he's not a high leverage guy per se in the bullpen, but he took on that persona with Venezuela. Like, if you seen how he put away Mike Trout, he put him away like he was slamming a door. Now, there was still some game left, but you could
Trout kind of looked awful in the WBC, right? He struck out a lot.
Yeah. He was going for the stars and stripes. He was going for glory.
So the book on Ruiz last year specifically was high leverage versus low leverage. He was a totally different pitcher. In the WBC, obviously, most of the time, he's in some more high leverage positions, and it was impressive to see him kind of flip the script. Last year in low leverage, opponents hit 204 against him with a 672 OPS. Last year in high leverage situations, opponents hit 320 with a 939 OPS. That is a crazy split. I think he's going to have a much bigger role in this year's bullpen,
no doubt.
Obviously out of the necessity without Liam Hendriks. But Lance Lynn gave Ruiz a lot of praise. Grifol gave him a lot of praise for the way he pitched for Venezuela. I'm sure Juan Diego was pumped to see how well he pitched for our boys, Venezuela. I hope it works out. I mean, he's got the stuff. There's no question about it. He has that mentality. For some reason last year in high leverage situations, he just kind of, it was, I don't know if it had anything to do with Tony or, him just being misused. Juan Diego says he just came with confidence, and hopefully he carries that over, because Lord knows the Sox are going to need their bullpen a lot early on in April, especially because guys aren't going to be stretched out. Cease, Kopech, those guys already are not, super deep into games. Giolito's a big wild card. Clevenger is a big wild card. So I think Davis Martin or Jimmy Lambert is a shoe-in to make the roster on opening day because they're going to need some guys who can stretch it out a little bit out of the bullpen. But I was pleased to see, and I'm glad that you reminded me because I failed to write it in my notes here with Jose Ruiz, but it was great to see. He's got the stuff. Where do you guys want to see him in this rendition of the non-Hendriks bullpen?
About 6, 7 still. I feel like we'll be deeper. I'm not ready to give him a hold position where I'm expecting him to give me a hold every time I ring his bell. But at the same time, like if you look at that stuff, that your bullpen just gets deeper. Let's just be perfectly honest. And you see where Ronaldo Lopez is right now in his transformation from going starter to full bullpen. That could be a two-headed monster that'll help transition Liam back into the bullpen. Let's just say Grifol doesn't want to give Liam the 9th inning immediately back. Get him some work. At least you could have that back end covered while having Graveman, while probably having a revamped Bummer. So you got options. It's not like, oh, it's the end of the world. Like Ruiz showed you firsthand against the world, like, hey, I dare you to ask me to come in with some guys with some meat on the bone.
I think Joe Kelly has an opportunity. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one that's getting called in the 9th inning when we get into it in April.
Yeah,
I think he has the right mentality, and he pitched today against the Brewers. He had 2 punchies, I think, in his 1 inning of work. He threw it up to 99. Like if he's throwing strikes, he arguably is the best arm in the White Sox bullpen right now. Outside, I mean, without Hendriks, that fastball is so much run.
I like what we saw at Graveman too, though. So I still lean more towards Graveman, just because he's proven it in Houston and Seattle. But that's a guy that I would go to in the 9th. I'm not gonna, turn anything that you said down with Joe Kelly, because that's still a guy that I want in there in the 7th, 8th, more so 7th. But that's a guy that I feel comfortable with in this pen. For me, though, people got to go back and realize that 2021, we had a really healthy pitching staff. And last year, that was the main difference, was the pitching staff was so banged up. And we might have to face it. We might not have to. I mean, that's just kind of the war of attrition when it comes to baseball as a pitching staff. You might have to see these guys get chances at holes that you didn't expect to. But again, I think that's what I go back to, this whole mentality thing with that competition. I was just happy that, some of these guys that like Ruiz got that opportunity. They're up to par with their performance right now, and they're going into the season with that kind of confidence booster, if you will. So, we didn't even talk about Diekman. I didn't like what I've seen so far in spring.
I didn't like when we made the trade for him, actually.
Yeah. Both lefties in our bullpen, meaning Diekman and Bummer, are so hot and cold depending on throwing strikes. Like Aaron Bummer, I remember looking this up last year. In outings where Bummer issues a walk, his ERA was like crazy high. And in outings where he doesn't issue a walk, it was like sub-1, like that big of a discrepancy. It's the same thing with Diekman. Like if you're gonna get a 6th inning and you have 2 lefties, you have to get those lefties out. You cannot walk lefty, and you're just behind the 8 ball. One of the things with the bullpen that I'm eager to see how Grifol is going to manage compared to Tony. Tony rarely ever had 2 guys up at the same time, where if somebody didn't have it, he has someone ready to go after that 3rd batter. Tony was like, you got the 6th inning, good luck, bud. And then until someone shit the bed and had, 5 guys reach base in a row, then he would finally get somebody ready and warmed up in the bullpen. But I'm just curious how Grifol is going to handle that situation. Real quick before we finish, Juan Diego says, what did you see of Clevenger in his last start, velo and health-wise on his landing? I saw some people talking about maybe favoring his landing leg a little bit. I didn't really see that too much. kind of interesting to see how he's adapted to his pitching motion now. Velocity was fine. He made a few mistakes with the curveball and he got burned. Like, I think he gave up 2 homers and they were both on hanging curveballs, where he was really sharp with the breaking stuff in the first inning or two. It's spring training. That's going to happen. What did you guys see out of Clevenger? I know, Gonzo, you got a chance to see him once in person.
Yeah, I was able to see his first outing, and to go, let me put this on the screen here. Velocity wise, even the first outing, he was hitting 95, 96 with the fastball. And the breaking stuff was pretty impressive. And even in the first outing with his slider curveball, I would say it was probably better than the first and the second outing. But to the credit that, Slav just said, not really too worried about, the health wise of his landing, because the motion seemed fluid. And this is even with the first outing with the pitch clock going, it still seemed fluid with whether he was in the wind up or stretch. It was still fluid. I liked what I saw out of Clevenger. And I'm not really too worried about the solo shot that he gave up. I'm actually pretty happy with what I saw from Clevenger and his 2 outings going into the regular season here.
Yeah. When I seen it, I was telling you, Gonzo, like, he's spinning the ball fucking great that afternoon. And when you think about the new pitching rules, like, I'm worried about Clevenger tripping over his own feet on the mound. If his breaking balls are backing up, that's what you look for, because velocity doesn't matter when you're looking at his RPM and everything else. Spin rate is very important to a guy like Mike Clevenger. So, to be honest with you, I think he looked good this spring. I'm excited to see him in black and white. As long as he keeps throwing those breaking balls and those sliders on time, that's all I really want.
If he gives you, let's say, 125 innings, somewhere in the ballpark of a 4 to 4.5 ERA, like, out of your number 5 starter, like, that's not bad.
I need a little bit more innings.
Yeah, you can argue, like, for $12 million, you want a little bit more than that. Like 150 innings would be great with a 4-ish ERA. Like, I think that's kind of best case scenario. But I mean, realistically, like, the expectations, regardless of the contract he was given, the expectations shouldn't be super high. I think
that's fair though, because when he was healthy last in 2019, he gave you 125 innings. So I think that's a good bar to set right there, regardless of what you signed the contract
gave us 119
for.
Last year. So, and
wow.
like, nobody seems to be kind of complaining about. I'm just saying, like,
here he goes.
If he gives you 120 innings at a 4-ish ERA, like, that's really good out of your number 5 starter. And Davis Martin, Sean Burke, maybe Jimmy Lambert, like, they can fill in with spot starts if necessary.
Yeah, and what you said, Slav, like, even with Kopech, like, that's a guy that at 95 innings with his first year in rotation, at 95, he was starting to teeter-totter with his stamina, and it was really affecting him, I felt like, in his outings after he hit that range, which, I mean, it's expected. You have to build that arm strength to last that duration of a season. So, I mean, for Kopech, you're kind of hoping for between, 135 to 150-ish, hopefully, this year.
To me, like, it's got to be 150 at least. He's not young. Like, he's inexperienced, but I think because of that, people think he's still, like, in his early 20s. Like, he's not young anymore. And he should be held to the standard now. Like, if he's not giving you 150 innings, like, he is a full-time starting pitcher, right? If we're, praising him as the number 3 starter in this rotation, like, then the bar should be a sub-4 ERA with 150 innings minimum, right? Like, he should be making 25
And that's not
starts.
a tall ask for somebody of Michael Kopech's talent.
He made 25 starts last year, but only 119 innings. And, for as much as we talk about Cease's lack of efficiency, Kopech obviously was even less efficient with going deep in his outings last year. Granted, I think early in the year they were really monitoring his innings, but to me, like, there's no more, governor on Michael Kopech. Like, the expectation is you're a full-time starter, make 30 starts, go for 200 innings if you can, but, like, the bar is set. It's not like, oh, well, 125 is really good, he's still young, or he is inexperienced. No, I want to see 30 starts. I want to see 175 innings. I want to see a sub-4 ERA. To me, like that.
There's a lot of pitchers, though, in the 150s. like when you go back at the innings pitch in the league, like Zach Wheeler, he was at like 155. So
Yeah, guys just don't go deep in ball games like these.
Yeah. So for me, it's like if you can give me a fresh 135 and teeter into the 150s, I'm okay with that. But
man,
I still
to me,
expect
135 is a disappointment for Michael Kopech. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying 135, like you hit that and you're just going strong at 135, and then you start to like, you see the arm starting to die out at like 150-ish. Because like
what do you mean?
It seemed like he was going strong. His arm was strong at like 95 innings, and then he started having these issues, and like he teetered out at like 119.
Well, yeah, he wasn't healthy. Like the knee issues, obviously, he was overcompensating with the arm. Look, I'm just saying, like, there's no more excuses, right? There's like 135 is not enough. If he's your number 3 starter, and if he's the guy that you want him to be, like, we need to raise the bar. Like, we can't continue to baby Michael Kopech.
Yeah. I just feel like it's easier said than done, though. Like building that arm.
That's what separates good teams from bad teams. Like that's what separates guys from being very good starting pitchers in Major League Baseball from everybody else. He has that potential. Like
I think he has that potential,
we need to stop
but again, like I don't think it's babying him. It's just it's the reality of building that arm strength to where your expectations of him are.
Do you know how many times he pitched 130 some innings in minor league baseball twice, if I'm not mistaken, before he made the majors? Like, stop with the like, stretch his arm out. No, it's
a difference of generations too. Like
I agree with that. I agree with that. I think at this point you see like 10 guys a year pitch 200 innings. That's fine. My point is, do not make 135 okay. Like, don't make 135 innings like, okay, great. Like, great season for Michael Kopech. Okay, if he gives you 135 and he's got no gas in the playoffs, like, what is it? What's the point? And I feel like I'm crazy. Like, I'm not poo-pooing Michael Kopech. I freaking love Michael Kopech. But, like, we need to raise the bar. We need to stop babying him and setting such low expectations. Like, we cannot – like, if he gives you 135 innings this season, then what do we say next season? I failed to see how 135 is, like, acceptable.
I mean, I understand where Gonzo's coming from, honestly, like the 135, because it will be an uptick from where he's at. But at the same time, you gotta see where Slav's coming from. Where if I got the audacity to have Tristan McKenzie and Michael Kopech in the same sentence, I need Kopech to at least give me 160 to 180 innings, because I'm pretty sure McKenzie's gonna have 200 this year. Let's just be honest with ourselves. Is Kopech in the ballpark of pitching 200 innings? No.
Not yet. He pitched 134 in the minors in 17, 126 in the minors in 18. He pitched 119 last year in the majors. Obviously, major surgery in between them, but like, let's stop with the like stretch it out and like we need to raise the bar for Michael Kopech. We can't fucking pimp him as a number 3 starter and like talk about his potential and then turn around and say like, yeah, 135 innings will be great. Like, if he's really good. Like, no, we need to raise the bar with Michael Kopech and hold him. If Dylan Cease gave you 135 this year, you're like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
If Lance Lynn gives you 135, you're like, what the fuck happened? Like, he needs to be held to the same regard and the same standards as the rest of these guys. Like, even Giolito, he's going to give you 125. So I don't know. I love Michael Kopech. I am rooting for him. I think his stuff is freaking outstanding. I think he's got the right mentality. Like, he has that fuck you mentality when he's got his shit going. We saw that against the Yankees on national TV last year. Like, and you can always put your cap, or I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say, but you can always kind of go back and reference that and you go, that's the type of shit like Michael Kopech could be doing. That's the type of stuff we need to be seeing more frequently out of him. Anything else on Kopech before we finally finish this up with Hendriks?
Well, this will be the last time we compare him to Tristan McKenzie on air.
Thank you. All right, last thing here before we head out. Let me see the comments real quick. Shout out to Juan Diego for like just being with us. He agrees with me on this one with Kopech. No more excuses for Juan Diego. So Thank you, Juan Diego. Go Venezuela. Thanks for listening. All right, last thing here. Circling back to Lance Lynn's interview on Foul Territory, he was asked to give an update on Liam Hendriks, and it was a very, very positive update. Go ahead and play the clip, Jay.
Well, last time I saw Liam, to be honest, he was like, this is going way better than I thought. And I was like, he looks ready. He's been throwing. We're waiting for, I want to tell you that he's got one more test coming up that tells us exactly what we want to know the 1st of April or the end of this month. So that will tell us a lot going forward. But, Liam's like, oh, once they give me the go, I'll be back in games and the next day. And I was like, Liam, calm down. Everything. Give yourself a break. I'm like, get yourself right, and we need you, when you're ready. He goes, I'll be ready right when they give me the go. And I was like, well, typical Liam fashion. I hear you, but make sure you're good to go. But he's throwing. He's been throwing bullpens when he feels good. So hopefully that means everything is cleared up and he's ready to go. And I mean, you hope to get him back by June if everything's perfect. In his mind, he'll be back in May. I was like, but we'll see. But he's looks good. He's he looks strong. So that's the number one thing. And when you see a guy like that going through it, and he's got good spirits and he looks strong, so that's a good sight to see when he comes in the clubhouse.
Incredible update there from Lance Lynn. Love to hear that from him. Nobody doubted Liam Hendriks' mentality going into this, right? He gets diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You got the fuck cancer shirts. Like, if there's a guy that is going to go in with the right mindset and be like, yo, this is bullshit. I'm going to get over this. I'm going to come back. I'm going to save 30 games and throw 99 again. Like, it's Liam Hendriks. So that was really, really reassuring to hear from Lance Lynn. Just even for the morale of the team, having him around, seeing him throw. It's nice to get positive updates on him. Lynn saying hopefully June. Liam probably saying I'll be back in May. That would be awesome. But Gonzo, just a really positive update from Lance Lynn, because the White Sox, rightfully so, have been very kind of tight-lipped about this. And when he's ready, if he's ready to come back. So good to see Lance give some positive updates on Liam, and hopefully the White Sox have him sooner than later because they know they're going to need him.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what the update is, because I know Lance did say that he has his last meeting here in end of April, so we'll see. Hopefully,
End of March, early April.
Yeah, so my bad, misspoke there, but that'll be an interesting update. We'll see where he's at in his revamp mode. From there, I know Liam will probably want to come back right away, but we have to be realistic and just for the best of the team, best for himself to bring him back accordingly. And I just got my Closeout Cancer shirt. I got 3 of them,
nice.
So I'll wear that next week once I get it washed and everything. So I'll be happy to wear that for Liam next week for our opening episode for the season.
That's great. I think we got cheated out of Liam in the WBC. Can you imagine what it'd been like him closing out somebody?
Shit, fuck off, God damn it.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? Like, I can't wait for him to come back.
God balls!
As a fan, like, can you imagine being at the rate Liam's first appearance?
It's gonna be electric.
It's gonna be one of the moments where you had to be there. That's the power that he has, the magnitude he has. He's universally loved by everybody. Everybody gets caught up in all the personal stuff and different politics. That doesn't matter. He's one of the best closers in the game, and he plays for your hometown team. And he's really, as Lance Lynn said, he's going to be here sooner than later. I'm excited. I'm pumped up.
Great news for Liam. Great news for the White Sox. Great news for everyone. Yeah, I mean, that we haven't really gotten any updates from the White Sox or from anybody else since Pitchers and Catchers Reporter, which is now, 5 weeks ago. This feels like it's been the longest spring training ever, but it's also like the first actual regular spring that we've had in a few years. So great. What's up?
I was gonna say, it sounds like Crochet's ahead of schedule too from his recovery. So as a lefty, he should be back sooner, and hopefully he's healthy. And as a prominent arm as a lefty, we're gonna definitely need him.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, the original kind of prognosis was end of May at the earliest, or maybe June. I could be wrong, but
They're saying
if
end
we
of
get
April now.
I mean, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Certainly could use a left-handed arm with Bummer and Diekman. That's all they've got right now. But great to hear from Lance Lynn. And again, shout out to the Foul Territory show on YouTube. Go look at go watch the interview. AJ Pierzynski, Adam Jones, Eric Kratz, Todd Frazier, a handful of former major leaguers. I'll do that show. They do a really good job. And they've got tons of interviews. So that Lance Lynn interview is a lot of really good stuff on the WBC, on the White Sox. Great stuff on Hendriks there too. So make sure to go check that out as we head into opening day. Any final thoughts, boys, before we get the hell out of here?
Well, I got to apologize. Gonzo, I'm sorry. I went along with the agenda as long as I can, but I can't sign off on Michael Kopech being better than Tristan McKenzie. I got more bad news for you. Jose Ramirez is not hitting 300 against the White Sox this year. You could cancel that. And,
wait, why is that bad news?
Because he wants Jose Ramirez to kill us again and again and again. And
if the White Sox let him, he will do it.
He's not going to do it. I think we had an outstanding show tonight, had a lot of fun. Proud of the United States of America and the White Sox in their showing in the WBC. Can't wait to do it again.
2026 is coming back. Gonzo, final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just going to be excited to see. Hopefully, I know we'll do our predictions next week for the season, but I have a good feeling the White Sox will have a better pitching rotation than anyone in the division. And yes, it's going to be Cease, Lance Lynn, Michael Kopech, and I don't care who else, Giolito or Clevenger.
Wait, earlier in the episode, you said Kopech was number 2. What, Gonzo? All right,
no, I said Kopech.
I'm going to go
2.
quote this shit.
You said Lynn 2.
I said Lynn 2. You just said Lynn 2, and you said Kopech 2 earlier.
All right, so when you go back earlier, this is what I said. I said
flip-flopping ass.
No, I said Cease, Kopech, Lynn, and then I said either your view of it with Lynn 2 or Kopech 3, regardless of the top 3, they're still better 1, 2, 3 than what Cleveland had to offer.
You got your Aaron Savali right here, buddy. Got your Cal Control right here, buddy.
Yeah, whoever the fuck is after Bieber and McKenzie.
Yeah.
Plesac, Quantrill, Savali is pretty damn solid.
Zach Plesac can wash his hands after using the bathroom. It's confirmed.
I wish Ozzie Jr. was here tonight, but he's in Chichi Vici or someplace else. Shout out again, Juan Diego Montenegro for being with us all night. He said he's going to send us some cool pics for Miami World Baseball Classic games. OG Blackout Show at gmail.com. Send us those pictures. We could throw them up in next week's episode. Hopefully you're back with us watching. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Blackout Show, CHI, Blackout Show Shy, Facebook. And as always, subscribe to the Guillen Grid if you're watching us here on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all the places you get your podcasts, we're available. For Jay Targaryen, for Chris Gonzalez, for Ozzie Guillen Jr. out on vacation somewhere with his family. Thank you so much for listening to episode 3 of the Blackout Show. Have a great night.